going to welcome Greg Nickerson. Gregory Nickerson is from Bighorn, Wyoming, and he knows this state inside out. You may know Greg from his time as a writer at the news organization Wyophile, where he illuminated big stories with the kind of complexity we need in our reporting, and where he profiled, with real love and care, some of the spectacular people who make Wyoming what it is. Greg also pays attention, as you'll hear today, to our amazing wildlife. Greg currently works as a writer and filmmaker for the Wyoming Migration Initiative, an organization to advance the understanding, appreciation, and conservation of Wyoming's migratory ungulates by conducting innovative research and sharing scientific information through public outreach. So Ignite is a perfect venue for Greg because it's one of those places where the scientific storyteller and the public meet. Please welcome Greg Nickerson for his story, Warhouse Wapiti, 20 years chasing a Yellowstone elk migration. Come on, Greg.
Well, after following elk for the better part of 20 years and being many miles up in the wilderness, I never thought I would be on stage to talk about it and share it with you in this kind of format. So I want to thank the Humanities Council for putting this together, because cross-pollination happens, so watch out. Could happen to you. Let's hit it. Go for it. So December 1994, I was 12 years old, riding a horse in the snowy Graybull River Canyon, and down the trail behind me comes my dad, hunched over in his saddle, and his face as white as a sheet. He had just gotten dragged by a mule, and he had internal bleeding. He was about to go into shock, and honestly, I wasn't sure that he was going to survive. He had just had heart surgery 4 weeks earlier. Somehow, Dad made it back to camp. He never went to the hospital, but he ended up with this bruise that lasted for months. And so, of course, the first thing he did next December, go elk hunting again. My dad's mule accident was my introduction to late-season elk hunting in the mountains outside of Meeteetse, and it's now been a passion of mine for over 20 years. But if my dad hadn't made it that day, I might not have learned to love wildlife, I might not have become a hunter, and I probably wouldn't be here tonight to talk to you about my work with the Wyoming Migration Initiative at the University of Wyoming. As a writer and a filmmaker, it's my job to help the public understand migration science. It's meaningful work because I want moments like this, with huge numbers of elk, to still happen for hunters and everyone else 100 years from now. Wyoming's big game is under pressure from housing, development, disease, highways, and abundant wildlife will suffer if we don't figure out how to balance our human needs with the animals' needs to migrate. Always in the background, I knew that migration was key to my hunting success. We hunted in the Cody herd, which was just one of 9 herds that spend time moving in and out of Yellowstone every year. My understanding of this migration was limited to one neighborhood, which was Warhouse Creek up the Graybull River. I knew that elk were there for 1 week in December when I was hunting, but where did they live the rest of the year? I really wanted to know. And it was the wildlife photographer Joe Reese who showed the world how each spring these elk migrate and do amazing things like cross the raging South Fork of the Shoshone River just to get up to the high country of Yellowstone, like the Thoroughfare Plateau, where they spend their summers. By the way, this photo is going to be in National Geographic this May, so check out that issue if you get a chance. Migration allows the elk to eat the most nutritious grass for more of the summer. An elk that migrates well eats this springtime green up from May through July by climbing up in elevation, and they really need that in order to survive. However, in fall, the winter in Yellowstone is too harsh for them to survive through the winter up there, so they have to migrate down to the foothills of Greater Yellowstone, places outside of Cody or Dubois or Jackson. When they make this epic journey, the elk are in peak condition, which is a good thing, because from January through April, they really have to eke out a living on winter range, waiting for calving season and the next spring green up to come so they can migrate again. So to put it plainly, these elk migrate over these huge mountains so they can get fat. Without migration, these animals would be worse off, and there would be a lot fewer of them than there are today. So migration through intact habitats is really crucial to the long-term survival of Wyoming's big game, which is such a vital part of our culture and our economy here in Wyoming. For the better part of 120 years, we've been trying to bring our wildlife back from the overhunting in the 1800s, and we've done a pretty good job at that. But conserving these migration corridors is really the next frontier in keeping our big game populations. And these migrations are really important globally. People all over the world are interested in them. A few weeks ago, the Wyoming Migration Initiative released a short video on mule deer in Yellowstone, and people from 53 different countries have watched it. So this spectacle of wildlife migration is one of the best things that Wyoming has. We're a boom and bust state, but if we conserve our wildlife, it will always be here for us to appreciate. So next December, I'll be going hunting again. My dad is in his 70s now, and he no longer goes up the mountains with us, but I'll still be chasing the elk migration that he taught me to love. If you want to learn more, go to facebook.com/migrationinitiative. Thank you.